Hello and welcome to another An Old Man Watches. And today I'm going to be talking about three John Wayne westerns from the 1930s. And before I do, a little bit of a kind of description of Wayne's career, because I think it's useful context. So his first leading role was in a major studio's 1930 western, The Big Trail. And the film was critically acclaimed, but a box office bomb. And it failed at the box office, not for no reason to do with Wayne's performance. It failed for the very simple reason that it was filmed in widescreen, and most cinemas did not have the technology to project widescreen films and didn't want to pay to do so. So, surprise, surprise, when you release a film that you can't actually show in cinemas, it doesn't do well at the cinema. Despite the fact that, the film's failure was nothing to do with him, it basically poisoned Wayne's reputation at the big studios. And not until 9 years later, when the director of Stagecoach insisted on casting Wayne and and basically fought for the right to cast Wayne in the film, did he get another chance at a significant role in a big studio film. And he made the most of it, became a huge star, and was a box office name through the rest of his career into the 70s. But between 1930's The Big Trail and 1939 Stagecoach, Wayne needed to make a living, and the way that he made a living was by making movies, almost all westerns, for the Poverty Row Studios of Hollywood, which were the cheapy end of town, who made the B-roll films that appeared before the major pictures. And he made 60 films in the 8 to 9 years between those two. I'm going to talk about three of them today. 1934's The Man from Utah, and two of his 8 movies that he made in 1935, The Desert Trail and Lawless Range. And in particular, what do they have in common? Because when you churn out 60 films in the same genre within a decade, you're going to be doing a lot of the same tropes and same features regardless. And I've previously discussed some of the broader aspects of Wayne's career and what he contributed to the Western genre in my earlier video on his movie The Trail Beyond. So if you're interested, you can always go watch that. But yeah, what do these three films have in common? Well, the first thing that they have in common is Rodeo. They all feature plots that revolve around someone who is involved in the rodeo/state fair, steer tying, bronco busting environment. And look, in the modern day, both rodeos and state fairs look back very fondly to a less urban time, and they celebrate the ideal of the free-range life on the prairie. And obviously in doing so, they ignore a lot of the negative elements of the expansion of the US and what that meant for the native people, and that's a big problem. And it's also a problem that all of these movies share. Like 1930s westerns are not a place to find cultural sensitivity at all. But I can also, setting all that aside, I can also see why for Poverty Row Studios, rodeos and state fairs were an opportunity, and they were a useful tool for them. And there's two primary reasons. So one is audience immersion. Audiences have probably never shot a gun at somebody. They likely, in 1930s cinema-going audiences, in many cases hadn't ridden a horse. They were probably mostly urban people. They'd not lived a life on the prairie. They'd never been cowboys. But they had probably been to a state fair and maybe a rodeo. Both those environments would be places that they could imagine themselves, and when they see them on screen, they can picture what it's like to be there. It helps immersion. It creates a connection with the audience that they can understand really easily. The second thing that using a rodeo as a setting allows you to do, and this is really important because you call Poverty Row for a reason, is that it lets you save money. It lets you save money in a couple of ways. First of all, because you can use a rodeo or state fair that is currently running as your, for your location shoots. You can go to a rodeo that is happening down the road from you and do some location shoots there. That's probably going to save you money, compared to tracking everybody out to Monument Valley. Secondly, obviously, you can use a whole lot of existing stock footage from rodeos. Just, find a source of stock footage of people doing their rodeo thing and include it in the movie. You can pad out some time that way. That'll save a lot of cash, obviously. So those are why these things I think are in there, why we see them as common tropes in all three of these movies. The second thing that all three of these movies feature is plots driven by robberies. Now, obviously, crimes are a common thing in westerns. You've got to have a bad guy. He's got to do bad things. But notably, as I said, the plots are driven by the robberies here. So it's not just that, the bad guy did a bad thing and we've got to stop him, but the robbery is much more integral to the plot. In two of them, the action basically starts because John Wayne's character accidentally wanders into the middle of a robbery and thwarts it with his fist-fighting, sharpshooting skills. Hilariously so, actually, in The Man from Utah, since, as he's pulling off all of his, fancy trick shot, sharpshooting stuff, Wayne clearly isn't even aiming. He's just kind of wafting his pistol around in the general direction of off-screen. It's quite funny to watch, actually, unintentionally, so... Again, two of these movies, not the same two, also feature Wayne's character being framed or arrested for crimes that he did not commit. And that's all about driving the plot and the action forward, since he then either needs to escape or, as happens here, do something heroic to prove his good guy bona fides to the authorities. So the robberies are very much driving the plot. They're very integral to it. They're not just a thing that happened, It's not just like, you need to catch the bad guy because he robbed the stagecoach, and then, the movie's about him chasing the bad guy. The robberies are actually integral to what is going on screen. The third thing, and I've named this to keep the theme with rodeo robbery rhythm going, I could have used another word, obviously, is singing cowboys. Now, I have stretched things a little bit here because the Desert Trail doesn't actually have singing elements, but both the other two movies do, and I wanted to talk about it, so it's in. So singing cowboys were a thing in 1930s cinema. In fact, this is the era of the singing cowboy. Films would often stop for the lead to sing or lip sync a ballad or two. And that appears to have been an outgrowth of 1920s radio serial westerns, which is a venue where I think this kind of makes more sense. It's already a purely audio performance, so breaking into song feels like less of an affectation. But audiences of the 30s lapped this stuff up. Singing cowboys were a big thing. I don't really get it myself, and I like musicals, but there you go. So both Man from Utah and Lawless Range have Wayne do a bit of lip syncing, and it's safe to say that he would have not have passed the auditions to be in Milli Vanilli, which is a reference that probably almost nobody will get, but there you go. Anyway, what I'm saying is he's bad at it, really bad. Thankfully, his efforts to kind of become a singing cowboy were pretty short-lived, and he kind of just stuck with being a cowboy. And focusing on things that he was good at, like faking fistfights. So that's the three things that I found to talk about with these three movies that they shared in common. What am I going to talk about next time? Well, next time I'm going to talk about one movie, but also two movies, because I'm going to talk about The Parent Traps, both the 1961 Haley Mills version and the 1998, yes, I said that right, Lindsay Lohan version. And you could probably subtitle this particular video, Remakes Are Not Always a Bad Thing, even if you like the 1961 original. So I'll be talking about that next time. Hope you come back for it. In the meantime, hope you enjoyed this one, and catch you later.